Hello and welcome. Welcome to Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace and Progress. This space where we explore real life spirituality and faith and personal growth without the perfection filter. I'm Buffy. If you've been wondering how to hold on to hope when life feels unfinished or uncertain, you're in the right place. Naming the messy middle. It is the liminal space where old plans fade and new ones aren't clear yet. Let me tell you, I remember after graduating from college, it was during the kind of economic crash, and I had plans about what I wanted to do after I had completed my degree. Unfortunately, I wanted to go into government work, and that had actually been put on a hiring freeze due to my level of student loans because the company that I wanted to work for, the governmental company, wanted to use my amount of loans against me. And I felt like I had worked so hard for this many years because I had a doctorate degree that it was so unfair that they, and also illegal actually, to be using the amount of loans that I had against me as to whether or not I would actually stay at that job for an extended period of time. It felt like everything that I had worked for and everything I had planned for and everything that I just knew was going to happen didn't happen. And that's when, the banks had the bailouts around 2008. And there was a lot of just uncertainty. People were in foreclosure. There was just a lot of stuff going on that just was uncertain. And I just felt like it was some cruel joke because also when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, my bachelor's of arts degree, the same thing had happened to me. So I was like, why is this happening to me again? Like, what is going on? But ultimately, it ended up working out for my own good because I do believe that God has a plan for all of us. And depending on your faith, you may have a similar feeling, but you may, have a different belief system, and that's 100% fine. It's a personal decision. It's your decision. So no judgment here. This is a judgment-free zone. You can expect from me, I know you all don't know me yet, but you can expect from me an honest conversation. You can expect a non-judgmental conversation. You can expect to be respected and for your opinion to matter and to not have to worry about, nasty comments or any divisive comments, because ultimately, I think that as women, we need to bond together. And I would ultimately love for this podcast to be a supportive place where people want together and want to share ideas and maybe build some sort of like women's community, right? So those are some goals like for the future potentially, right? So ultimately, it's normal to feel restless. It's normal to feel cheated at certain times, especially when you have plans that don't pan out. It's almost like a death, like not to be, overly dramatic, but it's almost like you're grieving like the plan that you had and the plan that didn't surface, and you're having to move on to a plan that's uncertain, which can be scary and cause anxiety. Which it's normal to feel anxious when you make a plan and it doesn't end up panning out. And so it's, even invisible sometimes, like, why is this not working for me? Like, why have I experienced this more than once in my life? It's not fair. And it's normal to feel like that in these seasons. Faith often deepens when we release the need to control outcomes. And I will give you an example to that. I had lived in one state and I had moved from my home state to another state. And I knew that I was staying in this state forever. And during that period of time, I was away from some family members that I was extremely close to. And I remember praying and praying and praying and praying that they would move to me rather than me move to them, because I was never going back to my home state, ever, 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 ever. And around that time, there was a song that came out by Van Zant that was called Help Somebody. And one of the lines that kept repeating to me over and over again while I listened to this song was, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. Well, I learned that very quickly because I was never going back to my hometown. And I told God so. Every chance I got, I told my spouse so. I told everyone that I was staying where I was with the nice weather and I was not dealing with winter ever again. Okay? So what ended up happening is I ended up moving back to my hometown. So in a way, God granted my plans for me my prayers. He granted my prayers for me. And the relatives that I missed and loved, we did end up living back together again. And it ended up working out because there were a lot of things that happened. There was some illness that happened. There were some issues with family that happened. And I was there to be able to help. And additionally, we started our family when we were there. And my mom had a friend who was talking about this house. And my mom couldn't find it for whatever reason. But it turned out that we bought that house. And then there was a scenario where my husband was looking for a job. And he ended up getting in contact with somebody who was looking for someone to share office space with. And then everything just flew from there. You know, we had our first child, and then we bought a house, really good price. All these things just lined up. So when they say that when it's from God or when it's from something that is meant for you, nothing can intervene in it. Nothing can stop it. And that's what happened. Things just flew for us. So I look back now and I think that my plans weren't as good as the plans that ultimately came for me, and the things that worked out for me, and I look back and I think, oh my goodness, how blessed was I at that point? But I didn't know it when I was in the middle, and I was so frustrated and so upset that it wasn't moving faster, but it moved right on time. Excuse me. So why the middle matters. It's almost like you're between the start of the journey, and everyone is excited when they start the journey, but it's the middle where people start getting restless, because when things are new, they're exciting, and they're like you're on the edge of your seat wondering what's going to happen. Like it's novel, it's you're just like excited. Like, what is the next thing that's going to happen? And then what's the next thing that's going to happen? And then what's the next thing that's going to happen? But when you're in the middle, you're like, okay, this has been going on for XYZ amount of time. I'm tired. I have a headache. I'm hungry. I'm frustrated. I don't know where I'm going to land. I don't know why it's taking so long. I feel like it's just taking forever. Kind of like Exodus. When they were walking through the wilderness, they all were cranky. They all were upset. But ultimately, the middle, there was an end to the middle, right? There was an end to that. And so the wilderness stories are found a lot in faith traditions, moments where transformation happens away from certainty. And so it's almost like a lesson to us that we have to learn to trust. We have to learn to trust when we don't know what the next step's going to be. We have to walk by faith. We have to believe that something out there is good for us. We have to believe that good is meant for us, right? That things will end up like they're supposed to. And I ultimately believe that because there have been many times where I've been saved and protected, and there was no good reason why that happened, but it happened, So generally, faith often deepens when we release the need to control outcomes, right? So growth requires discomfort, because if you're comfortable, and a lot of people want to stay comfortable, they don't want to be uncomfortable. They don't want to have to experience any discomfort whatsoever, whether it's maybe a little bit of hunger, maybe it's a little bit of frustration, maybe it's a little bit of just not knowing the answer. I know a lot of people have issues with that. I sometimes struggle with that, to be honest with you. I want to know how it's going to end. Give me the ending, and then I will be perfectly content, right? But doesn't that kind of take some of the fun away from it? Doesn't that take away the joy of being able to remember the times that God showed up for you, that God showed you and told you that things were going to be okay? He just didn't show you the full plan. Let me give you another example. I actually wanted to have a fifth child, and we did end up having a fifth child, spoiler alert. But on our anniversary that particular year, I had seen a rainbow. It was a double rainbow, or my husband had seen a double rainbow. And I actually believed that meant that we were going to have twins. And I kind of wanted twins, to be honest with you. But obviously we didn't have twins. And I remember we had been, trying for a while. And I had literally took that rainbow as the sign of a promise that we were going to have another baby. And so I just knew we were, but it wasn't happening. And I was getting frustrated and I was getting upset and I was thinking, oh, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And then I had this moment where it's like I realized, how many times have I tried to force my will onto God? How many times have I said, this is what's going to happen, and I think that it's going to be the best thing to happen, and this is what you should do? And then I thought about it, and I was like, how did those situations turn out for me? They didn't turn out good. Because if God does not want it for you, you shouldn't want it for you either. Because that means that is not going to be the thing that you have set in your mind. But when God wants it for you, it's going to be one of the best things ever. And I will say, I literally heard that message and believed that message. And I started praying. I said, God, if this isn't what you want for me, then I don't want it for me either. Because I know how it works out. I know that it's not good. And if you don't want it, then I don't want it. Fast forward a month later, we found out that we were expecting. All was good. And then we got our fifth. So we got our final baby, which was a baby girl. So I feel like that moment grew my faith and showed me that God is there for us always. I mean, he's not a genie that grants wishes and things like that all the time, but he does give blessings. He does answer prayers, and he knows what he's doing. He's in control of it all. So sometimes, like we said, growth requires discomfort, waiting stretches, which I don't have a lot of patience, I'll be honest with you on that one, and perspective. Delays can be sacred pauses. And in that moment, I feel like God was trying to show me, look, you need to appreciate what you have. You need to realize that you cannot make things happen. I make things happen. And when I make things happen, they happen on my timing, because my timing and my ways are higher than yours. And there are opportunities to listen rather than to rush into something. Can you imagine if I had continued pushing forward even when God was like, no, right? Timing is everything. So now let's talk about practices to nurture your faith in the uncertainty. Daily stillness is a big one. I feel like we rush or flutter from one place to another, one place to another, one place to another. Breath, prayer, meditation, or silent reflection cultivate presence. Even 5 minutes can calm anxiety and invite clarity. Oftentimes out of nowhere, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but I've actually had experiences where people have unwittingly been a messenger for me. For instance, when I moved away from my home state to another state, I remember being in Walmart because I needed an oil change and it was a big city. So I had probably about 4 hours to burn in Walmart. It was like a massive Walmart, like the 6th largest in the country. And I remember continuing to run into this lady like over and over and over and over again. And I was in a pretty difficult educational track. And I remember just being terrified because you had one test at the end and that was going to be it to determine whether or not you went forward into that career path or not. And so I was terrified, and I kept seeing this lady everywhere. She was even at McDonald's back then when they had the Walmart, they had it inside the store. So essentially I ran into her, and then I'm in the bathroom, and her and I are both washing our hands at the same time. And she actually turns to me and she says, "Don't worry, you will pass your test. You're going to get your goal." And then to this day, it may sound crazy to some of you, but to this day, when she looked down and had wiped her hands, it was like she never had said anything to me. It was really bizarre. I sometimes think that maybe angels walk on earth and give us, messages and kind of encouragement at certain times. What is it? It's like some people sometimes have entertained an angel unaware. But to this day, I don't remember if I saw her walk out the door or what happened. But I do believe that it was some sort of encouragement for me. Call me crazy, that's fine. I mean, I know we all have our own beliefs, but it just hit me that that was like a moment that I was like, yes, like there was some sort of message there for me, right? And so I think sometimes listening to those things and acknowledging those things shows us that, there is closeness there is a relationship there. So, and also feel free to write honest journaling, right? The journal is for you. It's not you being ungrateful. It's not you, essentially being hateful or unbelieving or anything like that, but write doubts, write frustrations, write your gratitude, right? And so, for example, a really good prompt might be, what am I learning about myself today? Or where did I notice grace even in struggle? And I think at that moment, we realize that grace is closer than we think. We realize that, life can be hard, sure, but there are good things that come from it. There are unexpected moments of like just joy. I think they call those shimmers that just make you realize that we're not alone, right? Like the messy middle is messy, yes, but it's not going to be that way forever. And don't forget to lean on your village, your community, and have conversation. Find a trusted friend, a faith group, or a therapist. Growth isn't meant to happen in isolation. If you only have yourself to bounce ideas off of, you're not going to get very far, right? I feel like we were meant to be part of a community that supports each other, a community that loves each other. And I think one of the biggest things that's happened in our world is we've lost community. We've lost the ability to have a conversation with someone, whether or not we agree with everything they say. But just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean that you hate them. And just because you don't agree with everything that someone says doesn't mean that you think they're a bad person, right? I think we need to learn the art of a polite disagreement. You know what? Honestly, I don't agree with all of that. And that's okay because you're entitled to your opinion and I'm entitled to my opinion. Rather than, inciting violence or any other number of things that are unnecessary, right? Just use our words. Let's not use weapons and fists and combat, right? Also, micro acts of service. Serving others shifts focus from uncertainty to compassion. And I think compassion is an extremely beautiful gift for the people that receive it, for the people that give it, because ultimately when you offer other people compassion, you're seeing them as people. You may not know them fully, but you're seeing them as people, acknowledging their humanity, acknowledging that they deserve love, acknowledging that you may not fully understand their path. And that's okay, right? We don't have to understand everything about someone to love them because we are called to love people. We are called to do good for people. We are called to be good people, right? So you can also do rituals of hope, candle lighting, a walk at sunrise, reading sacred texts or inspiring poetry, simple grounding gestures that signal trust in something larger than ourselves. And then trusting the slow work. Sometimes you think about how seeds come to be, right? Seeds are an example of faith. We plant those seeds because we know that they're going to be something greater, that they're going to grow, they're going to blossom, they're going to give us a yield, right? They're going to give us something that we can't see until the time comes that they sprout and they grow and they produce, right? If that's not an act of faith, I don't know what is. And also, hindsight often reveals that the middle was necessary preparation. We had to do some work before we could realize that the middle is where it was all about, right? That's where we grew our faith. That's where we knew what we were capable of. That's where we were tested. We were tested and we passed the test. And that's what ultimately got us through the middle, right? Not being a pessimist, not thinking, oh, it's never going to happen. Not saying, oh, I give up, forget it, I don't want it. Like, that's not what I want. We ultimately withstood the test and patience of time. And that's awesome. And that's sometimes hard to do, especially when it's something you want more than anything. So guys, I would encourage you to name one small thing that you're seeing take root, even if it still feels hidden. Faith in the messy middle isn't about ignoring pain or faking optimism. It is about believing that this in-between space is still holy ground. You are becoming even now. If this episode spoke to you, take a moment today to write down one insight or great reminder you want to carry through your own messy middle. Share it with me on Instagram at recovering_perfectionist_mama, at either Instagram or TikTok or YouTube if you wish. Or you could leave a message on the podcast page so we can encourage one another. Your story might be the hope someone else needs. And wouldn't that be great to think that your story inspired somebody else who's struggling? Life rarely moves in neat straight lines. In this 30 to 45 minute episode, we've explored how to find and strengthen your faith when you're stuck in the in-between, where things feel uncertain, unfinished, and beautifully transformative. You will walk away with practical practices, which we've talked about here, and soulful encouragement to grow right where you are. Guys, I want to thank you very much for listening to this podcast, and I hope that in some way it offered you some encouragement. That would mean a lot to me. And I also hope that you will tune in here soon. I've been posting about 2 podcasts a day just to try to get, because I know a lot of people like to binge or whatever. And so I wanted to try to get some under my belt so that you guys, if you wanted to listen to more, that they would be available for you. My first one was on intuitive eating. And then I've done various other topics if you'll look through those and if there's something you're interested in. Or if you have an idea for some topics, I would be more than happy to entertain those. And I hope that you guys have a great night, and thank you. And I hope that you will tune in here soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.